My name is Rachel Harmon. I'm 36 years old. And I built my company from nothing. Not from family money. Not from connections. Not from luck. From a $4,000 personal loan. A spare bedroom in a studio apartment in Austin, Texas. And 4 years of 18-hour days that I don't think my body has fully recovered from yet. By the time I was 34. Harmon Creative Solutions had 12 full-time employees. 3 major corporate clients. And a reputation in the Austin market that I had earned one project at a time. I was proud of it. Genuinely, deeply proud. And then my sister walked in. Not as a threat. Not as a competitor. As family. As someone I trusted completely. Igeuhia Etiop. A good one. Senior account manager. Because she needed a fresh start and I believed in second chances and because she was my sister and that's what you do. 6 months later. I was the one being escorted out of my own building. By my own security team. While my sister sat in my office. In my chair. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. I walked to my car. Sat in the parking lot. And I made myself one promise. I would rebuild. Bigger. Better. And I would be patient. Because the most satisfying revenge isn't the kind you take in anger. It's the kind that walks through your door. Hands you a resume. And doesn't realize who's sitting on the other side of the desk. 3 months later. My sister applied for a job at my new company. I was the one who scheduled her interview. I need to tell you about Lauren. Because you can't understand what she did. Without understanding who she was first. Lauren Harmon is 3 years older than me. 39 now. And growing up. She was the one everyone assumed would be successful. She was loud where I was quiet. Confident where I was careful. The kind of person who walked into a room and immediately started talking. While I was still figuring out where to sit. My parents adored her for it. Dad especially. He had this way of lighting up when Lauren spoke. Like whatever she said was automatically interesting just because she was the one saying it. I was the one in the background. Taking notes. Doing homework. Watching. Always watching. Lauren went to UT Austin on a partial scholarship. Studied marketing. Graduated with a decent GPA and immediately landed a job at a mid-size agency in Dallas because she interviewed beautifully and she always had. For a while. He did well. Then she didn't. I won't go into everything because honestly it's not my story to tell in detail. But the short version is this. 2 relationships that ended badly. A job she lost after a restructuring. Another job she quit after 6 months because the manager was difficult. A third job that simply didn't work out. By the time Lauren was 37. She had a resume with gaps in it and a confidence that had started to crack at the edges in ways only a sister could notice. She called me on a Tuesday evening in March. I was at my desk. Still working at 9 p.m. the way I always was in those days. Rach. I need to ask you something. And I need you to not make it weird. I put my pen down. What's going on, Lauren? She took a breath. I heard it clearly even through the phone. I need a job. A real one. Something stable. It's been a rough year. And I know you've built something real down there and I was wondering if there was anything at Harmon Creative that might. She trailed off. I sat with it for a moment. Lauren asking me for help was not something that happened often. Lauren asking me for anything felt strange in the way that things feel strange when the natural order of something shifts without warning. She was supposed to be the successful one. I was supposed to be the one still catching up. And here she was. Calling me. Asking. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He was my sister. I told her I had a senior account manager position that had just opened up. That it paid well. That she'd be good at it if she took it seriously. He said. I will, Rach. I promise. You won't regret this. I believed her. That was my first mistake. Lauren started on a Monday in April. I remember because I had stayed late the night before reorganizing the office layout to make sure her desk had good light. I had put a small succulent on it. The kind that doesn't need much attention to survive. I thought that was a good sign. I should have paid more attention to what I was actually thinking when I chose it. She walked in at 8:52. 8 minutes early. Dressed perfectly. Hair done. That Lauren smile fully operational. The one that made rooms turn toward her like sunflowers toward light. My team loved her immediately. Of course they did. Marcus from design said she's awesome within the first week. Priya from client relations told me Lauren is so easy to work with. Even Daniel, my operations manager and the most skeptical human being I have ever employed, said she knows what she's doing. Rachel, you made a good call. And for the first 2 months, she did know what she was doing. She handled the Meridian account beautifully. Took 3 client calls that I didn't have time for and came back with notes so detailed I printed them out and kept them. She stayed late twice without being asked. She brought donuts on a Friday and remembered that Marcus was allergic to nuts and got him a separate bag. She was performing. I know that now. But at the time, I just thought my sister had finally found her footing. I started including her in senior meetings, introducing her to clients, bringing her into conversations about the company's direction that I had never shared with anyone outside my core leadership team. I told her about the Callaway Group pitch, the biggest opportunity Harmon Creative had ever pursued. A 3-year contract with a national retail brand worth approximately $2.3 million in revenue. I told her because she was my senior account manager and it was relevant to her role. And because she was my sister. And because I trusted her the way you trust someone you've known your entire life. Without ever stopping to ask whether that trust was actually earned or just assumed. She asked good questions about the pitch. Took notes. Offered suggestions that I actually incorporated into the presentation. 2 weeks before the Callaway pitch, Lauren asked me if she could take the lead on the opening section of the presentation. I said yes. She had earned it. Or so I thought. The night before the pitch, I stayed until midnight refining every slide, every talking point, every contingency answer for questions the Callaway team might ask. Lauren had left at 6. Said she had an early morning and needed rest before the big day. I thought that was reasonable. It wasn't. The Callaway pitch was at 10 a.m. I arrived at the office at 7:30. Coffee in hand. Presentation loaded. Team briefed. Everything exactly where it needed to be. Lauren wasn't there yet. I checked my phone. No message. 8 a.m. Still no Lauren. I texted her. Running late? No reply. 8:30. I called. Straight to voicemail. I told myself she was probably stuck in traffic. That she would walk through the door any minute with an explanation and that Lauren smile and everything would be fine. She didn't walk through the door. At 9:15. 45 minutes before the most important pitch of my company's life. My phone rang. It wasn't Lauren. It was David Callaway, Senior VP of the Callaway Group. My stomach dropped before he said a single word. Rachel. His voice was careful. Measured. The voice of someone who has delivered uncomfortable news before and knows how to pace it. I want to be upfront with you about something before our meeting this morning. I gripped the phone tighter. We received a proposal yesterday evening. From a firm called LH Creative Solutions. The proposal was remarkably similar to the materials your team shared with us during our preliminary conversations. Same market positioning. Same 3-phase rollout structure. Same pricing model. The room went very quiet around me. LH Creative Solutions, I said. Yes. The founder reached out directly to our CEO. Presented it as an original concept. I sat down. I don't remember deciding to sit. My legs just stopped working properly. The founder's name, I said. Can you tell me the founder's name? Pause. Lauren Harmon, he said. I put my hand flat on my desk. My sister had taken my pitch. Every slide. Every strategy. Every number I had spent 4 months developing. She had repackaged it under her own company name and walked it directly to the CEO of my biggest prospective client. The night before my presentation, while I was still in the office refining the final slides, she had left at 6. Said she needed rest. She had gone home and sent my pitch to David Callaway's CEO with her name on the cover page. Rachel. David said carefully. I want you to know we are not moving forward with LH Creative. What happened here raises serious concerns for us about the origins of the material. But I think you understand why we need to pause our conversation with Harmon Creative as well while we sort through this. I understood. Thanked him. I don't know how. I hung up. I sat in my office for 4 minutes without moving. Then I picked up my phone and called Lauren. This time she answered. Hey Rach. How did the pitch go? Her voice was completely steady. Casual. like she was asking about the weather. And in that moment I understood something that I had been refusing to understand for months. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a moment of weakness or desperation. She had planned this. Carefully. Patiently. From the moment she walked through my door. I didn't scream at her on the phone. I want to be clear about that. Because every part of me wanted to. Every single part. But I had learned something a long time ago sitting in the back of a classroom watching people who were louder than me get less done. Noise is not power. Control is power. And in that moment, control was the only thing I had left. So I said, Lauren, I need you in my office. No. He said, Rach, what's wrong? You sound weird. I said, office. No. Please. And I hung up. She arrived 20 minutes later. Still dressed perfectly. Still that smile. But something behind her eyes was different now. Calculating. Waiting to see how much I knew. She sat across from my desk the way she used to sit across from our parents when she'd done something wrong as a kid. Chin slightly up. Posture perfect. Like confidence itself was a defense. I told her what David Calloway had told me. Word for word. Every detail. She let me finish. Then she tilted her head slightly. Rach. I can explain that. I looked at her. Then she said the thing that I will never forget for the rest of my life. He said, I was trying to help you. I thought if I pitched it separately it would create competition and Calloway would move faster. I was doing it for the company. For you. I stared at my sister. She held eye contact. Completely steady. She actually believed I would accept that. She had looked at me across that desk and decided that I was still the little sister. Still the one who deferred. Still the one who adjusted her own understanding of reality to make Lauren more comfortable inside it. I said, you registered a company called LH Creative Solutions. Pause. Almost invisible. I was going to tell you about that. It was just an idea I was exploring. When did you register it? I said. She blinked. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I said. While you were leading the senior meetings I invited you into. While you were sitting in on strategy sessions I included you in because I trusted you. Rach. While I was showing you every number. Every client relationship. Every piece of work this company has built for 4 years. She said nothing. I leaned forward. I want your access cards. Your laptop. Your client files. Everything that belongs to Harmon Creative. On this desk by end of day. Her expression shifted then. The performance dropped just slightly. Something harder underneath it. You're firing me, she said. I'm protecting my company, I said. Yes. She stood up. Smoothed her jacket. That chin still up. You'll regret this, Rachel. It wasn't a threat exactly. It was just a statement delivered with the absolute certainty of someone who had never truly lost at anything that mattered to them. She left my office. I sat very still for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. Because Lauren was right about one thing. This wasn't over. She just had the direction completely wrong. My lawyer's name is Patricia Owens. 54 years old. Former corporate litigator. Everything. 4 months of development. Every draft saved on our internal system with automatic timestamps. Patricia was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Then she said, Rachel, she walked into a lawsuit. She explained it clearly. Non-disclosure agreement violation. Misappropriation of proprietary business materials. Tortious interference with a prospective business relationship. The Calloway pitch wasn't just an idea Lauren had borrowed. It was a documented, time-stamped, legally protected business asset that she had taken and presented as her own to a client she had accessed through her position at my company. I asked Patricia how long it would take. He said, that depends on whether Lauren wants to fight it or settle. My guess based on what you've described is that she'll fight it initially. Then she'll see the documentation and she'll settle. I asked what settlement looked like. Patricia said, dissolution of LH Creative Solutions. Return of all materials. A non-compete agreement. And damages. We'll start the number high and see where she lands. I said, okay, do it. Then I asked the second question. The one that had been sitting in my chest since David Calloway's phone call. Is there anything she can use against me? Any angle I'm not seeing? Patricia paused. He said, there's one thing you should be prepared for. When people get cornered legally they often look for leverage. Personal leverage. Things that have nothing to do with the legal matter but create enough noise to complicate negotiations. Thought about Lauren. About how well she knew me. About every conversation we'd had over 6 months. Every vulnerability I had let her see. I said, I understand. Patricia said. Document everything from this point forward. Every communication. Every interaction. Every voicemail. Save it all. I hung up and immediately started a folder on my personal laptop. Titled it simply, Lauren. Over the next 3 weeks I would fill that folder with things I wished I didn't have to save. Because Patricia was right. Lauren didn't go quietly. The first thing Lauren did was call my employees. Not all of them. She was smarter than that. She targeted 3 people specifically. Marcus from design. Priya from client relations. And Tom. My youngest hire. 24 years old. 6 months into his first real job and still figuring out how offices actually worked. I know this because all 3 of them came to me separately within the same week. Uncomfortable. Apologetic. Each one starting the conversation with, Rachel, I need to tell you something and I want you to know I didn't ask for this. Lauren had told Marcus that I was planning layoffs. That the Callaway deal falling through had put the company in financial trouble and that she had left because she saw it coming and wanted to protect herself. She told him she felt terrible about it and just wanted him to know so he could start looking. She told Priya that I had been considering replacing her with a junior hire for months. That she had overheard conversations. That she felt guilty keeping it from her but couldn't stay silent anymore. She told Tom. And this one was the most calculated of all 3. That the reason she left was because I had created a hostile work environment. That there were things happening at Harmon Creative that weren't right. That he was young and should be careful about his association with the company. None of it was true. Every word was designed to do one specific thing. Destabilize my team from the inside while I was focused on the legal situation on the outside. It was smart. I'll give her that. Painful to admit but true. Lauren understood people. She always had. She knew exactly which anxiety to press for each person. Financial fear for Marcus. Professional insecurity for Priya. Moral uncertainty for Tom. I called an all-hands meeting that Friday. I stood in front of my 12 employees and I told them the truth. All of it. The pitch. The lawsuit. What Lauren had said to each of them. I didn't soften it. I didn't perform confidence I didn't feel. I said, I know some of you have been contacted. I know what was said. I want you to hear the actual facts directly from me and then I want you to make your own decisions about whether you trust this company and whether you want to stay. The room was very quiet. Then Marcus raised his hand. He said, Ray, we know who built this place. We know who stays late. We know whose name is on every client relationship we have. Lauren was here for 6 months. You've been here for 4 years. He looked around the room. Nobody's going anywhere, he said. I had to look at the ceiling for a moment. Not because I was going to cry. Because something that had been wound very tight inside my chest since David Callaway's phone call loosened just slightly. My team was still there. Lauren had tried to take that too. She had failed. But she wasn't finished. 3 days later I got a call from my landlord. His name was Gerald Fitch. 60 years old. Commercial property owner. We had rented our office space from him for 2 years without a single issue. He said, Rachel, I don't quite know how to bring this up, but I received a call this week from someone claiming to be a former employee of yours. Making some serious allegations about the business. About financial irregularities. About client fraud. I closed my eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then I opened them and said, Gerald, can I come see you today? He said yes. I drove to his office with 4 years of clean financial records and every client contract Harmon Creative had ever signed. I laid them on his desk and said, ask me anything you want. He looked through them for 20 minutes. Then he looked up. He said, I owe you an apology, Rachel. I should have called you first before this bothered me as much as it did. I said, you did the right thing calling me at all, Gerald. Thank you. I drove back to my office. And I added the Gerald conversation to my Lauren folder. Patricia was going to want to know about this one. Patricia filed the lawsuit on a Thursday morning. Harmon Creative Solutions v. Lauren Harmon and LH Creative Solutions. Filed in Travis County District Court. Austin, Texas. 3 counts. NDA violation. misappropriation of proprietary business materials, tortious interference with prospective business relations. The damages figure we started with was $380,000. Not because I expected to get every dollar. Because Patricia had taught me that you start where you can defend and let the other side show you where they're willing to land. Lauren's response came 8 days later through her attorney, a man named Brett Callahan. I looked him up immediately. Mid-size firm in Dallas. Decent reputation. Not Patricia's level but competent enough to make things complicated if Lauren was willing to fund a fight. Apparently she was. Brett's initial response was what Patricia had predicted. Denial across all 3 counts. A counter-narrative that Lauren had developed the core concepts independently and that any similarity to Harmon Creative Materials was coincidental. That Lauren had been constructively dismissed under hostile conditions. That she intended to pursue her own claims against me. Patricia read the response on a Tuesday afternoon while I sat across from her desk. She finished. Set the papers down. Looked at me. He said. He's going to fight it. For a while anyway. This is stage 1. They always deny first. Costs them nothing to deny and it costs you time and stress. That's the strategy. Wear you down emotionally while they look for anything they can use. I said. What do we do? Patricia said. We respond. Methodically. And we let the documentation do the talking. She submitted our evidence package 2 weeks later. 114 pages. Timestamped file histories going back 18 months. Internal server logs showing exactly when each pitch document was created, modified and accessed. Access records showing Lauren's login credentials pulling the complete Callaway pitch folder at 5:47 p.m. on the evening she left early claiming she needed rest. 5:47 p.m. 13 minutes before she walked out of the building. There was also the email. Patricia had subpoenaed Lauren's work email records as part of discovery. And there was. Sent at 11:23 p.m. that same night. From Lauren's personal email address to the personal email of Callaway Group CEO. Attached to the email were 7 documents. Every single one of them originated from Harmon Creative's internal server. Patricia submitted the email as Exhibit F. He said. This is where they settle. He was right. Brett Callahan called Patricia 3 days after receiving our evidence package. His client was prepared to discuss resolution. Patricia called me immediately after. He said. They want to talk numbers. What's your priority here, Rachel? Money or closure? I thought about it for exactly 4 seconds. I said. I want LH Creative dissolved. I want a non-compete that covers Austin and Dallas for 3 years. I want the damages to cover my legal fees and the Callaway opportunity cost. And I want it in writing that she cannot contact my employees, my clients or my landlord. Patricia said. That's reasonable. I'll make it slightly unreasonable in the first offer and we'll meet in the middle. I almost smiled. Settlement negotiations took 11 days. Lauren got nothing. LH Creative Solutions was formally dissolved on a Wednesday morning. She signed a 3-year non-compete covering Austin, Dallas and Houston. She agreed to damages of $95,000 to be paid in installments. And she signed a contact restriction order covering every person and entity connected to Harmon Creative. Patricia called me when the final signatures came through. He said. It's done, Rachel. Congratulations. I sat in my car in the parking garage outside my office building. The same parking garage I had sat in 6 months earlier the day Lauren walked into my company for the first time. I had felt something that day too. Something I hadn't been able to name at the time. Now I could name it. It was the last moment before I stopped being naive. I didn't feel happy sitting in that car after the settlement. Not exactly. I felt something quieter than that. Something more like solid ground under my feet after a long time of uncertain footing. I went back upstairs. I had a company to rebuild. The 3 months after the settlement were the hardest of my professional life. And I want to be honest about that. Because this kind of story is easy to tell in a way that makes the recovery sound clean. Linear. Like once the legal part was over everything snapped back into place. It didn't. The Callaway Group never came back. David called once after the settlement to express what he described as genuine respect for how I had handled the situation. He wished me well. He said perhaps in the future when things settled. Perhaps in the future is the professional way of saying probably not. I lost 2 other clients in the aftermath. Not because of anything Lauren had done directly, but because the lawsuit had generated noise in the Austin business community. People talk. Vendors talk. And when a company is involved in litigation, even litigation they win, some clients quietly start looking for stability elsewhere. I don't blame them. Business is business. I understood it even when it hurt. By month 2 I had gone from 12 employees to 9. Not layoffs. 2 people left for other opportunities and I made the decision not to replace them immediately. To run leaner. To make sure every dollar coming in was doing real work before I expanded again. Marcus stayed. Priya stayed. Tom stayed. That mattered more than I can properly explain. I worked harder in those 3 months than I had worked since the very beginning. Cold outreach to new clients. Rebuilding the Callaway pitch into a stronger version and presenting it to 3 other national brands. Spending Saturdays doing the financial modeling that I used to pay someone else to do because I needed to know every number personally. There is something clarifying about having to rebuild. Not comfortable. Not pleasant. But clarifying in the way that difficulty always is when you come out the other side of it. James was the one who kept me grounded through all of it. James Rourke. My boyfriend of 2 years. An architect with a quiet steadiness that I had come to depend on more than I ever expected to depend on anyone. He never told me it would be okay. I appreciated that. Empty reassurance from someone who doesn't know whether things will be okay has always made me feel more alone, not less. What he did instead was show up. Every Friday evening with food I hadn't remembered to buy. Every Sunday morning with coffee already made when I came downstairs still thinking about client proposals. Every late night when I was still at my desk at 11. Just there. Reading. Present. Not asking me to stop working but making sure I knew I wasn't alone while I did. One evening in month 2 he sat across from me at the kitchen table while I was going through financials and he said, "Wait, look up for a second." I looked up. He said, "You built this once with nothing. You're rebuilding it now with experience and a team that chose to stay and a lawyer who already won. The math is different this time." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I went back to my spreadsheet. But something in my chest felt different after that. The math is different this time. He was right. It was. By month 3, Harmon Creative had signed 2 new clients. A regional healthcare brand and a mid-sized tech startup that had been referred to me by Gerald Fitch. My landlord. The same man Lauren had called trying to destabilize my lease. Gerald had sent them to me personally. Said, "I know someone who runs a tight and honest operation. Call Rachel Harmon." I called Gerald to thank him. He said, "Just keep doing what you're doing." I intended to. And then on a Tuesday morning in month 3, my office manager knocked on my door. He said, "Wait, I have an application here I think you should see." He set it on my desk. I looked at the name at the top. Lauren Harmon. I read it twice to make sure I was seeing correctly. My sister had applied for a senior account manager position at Harmon Creative Solutions. The company she had tried to destroy. The company that had sued her and won. The company where she was legally prohibited from contacting employees or clients. She had applied through our public job listing, which technically did not violate the contact restriction order because it was an application through a third-party platform rather than direct contact. I sat with that for a long moment. Then I picked up the phone and called Patricia. Patricia listened. Then she was quiet for 4 full seconds, which for Patricia was the equivalent of anyone else laughing out loud. He said, "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. Then I smiled for the first time in 3 months. I said, "I want to schedule her interview." Patricia advised me to loop in our HR consultant before proceeding. Her name was Diane Moss. 47 years old. 20 years in human resources. The kind of professional who had seen every possible version of workplace complexity and responded to all of it with the same measured calm that made you feel simultaneously reassured and slightly intimidated. I called Diane the same afternoon. I explained the situation. The lawsuit. The settlement. I scheduled Lauren's interview for a Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. I told my office manager to send her the standard confirmation email. The same one every candidate received. Time, location, parking instructions, what to bring. I wondered if Lauren would recognize the building address. She would. She had worked here for 6 months. I wondered if that would stop her from coming. It didn't. Thursday arrived. I wore navy. My best blazer. The one I wore to important client presentations. Not to intimidate. To remind myself who I was in that room. At 1:58 p.m. my office manager knocked. He said, "Your 2 o'clock is here." I said, "Send her in. Please." 30 seconds of silence. Then the door opened. Lauren walked in. She was dressed well. Professionally. That chin still up. That posture still perfect. He had always known how to enter a room. But something was different from the last time I had seen her. The performance was still there. But underneath it, something was working harder than usual to hold it together. A tension around her eyes. A half second of something when she saw me sitting behind that desk that she covered almost instantly but not quite instantly enough. Almost. I gestured to the chair across from me. "Please. Sit down." She sat. We looked at each other across my desk. The same desk where 6 months ago she had told me she was trying to help me. The same desk where I had asked for her access cards and her laptop and everything that belonged to Harmon Creative. I folded my hands on the desk. And I said the most professional thing I have ever said in my entire life. "Thank you for coming in, Lauren. I've reviewed your application. I have some questions about your experience and your goals. Shall we begin?" Her expression did something complicated. Then she said, "Yes. Let's begin." And the interview started. I asked her every standard question. Diane had prepared a list. 12 questions. The same ones we asked every senior account manager candidate. I read them from the same sheet. In the same order. With the same professional tone I used for every interview I had ever conducted. "Tell me about your most recent professional experience." She talked about LH Creative Solutions. Described it as a boutique consultancy she had founded and subsequently closed due to market conditions. Clean. Rehearsed. Technically accurate in the way that a half-truth always is. I wrote notes. Said nothing that wasn't on my question sheet. "What would you describe as your greatest professional strength?" He said. "Relationship building. I understand people. I know how to make clients feel heard and valued." I nodded. Wrote it down. "Can you describe a situation where you had to navigate a difficult professional relationship?" She paused for exactly 2 seconds. Then she said, "I think every professional environment has its challenges. I've learned that clear communication and transparency are the most important tools in any difficult situation." "Transparency," I said. She said, "Absolutely." I wrote the word down. Underlined it once. We continued. "Where do you see yourself professionally in 3 years?" He said, "I want to be part of building something meaningful. Contributing to a team with real vision. I've spent time on my own and I've learned that the best work happens in the right environment with the right leadership." "The right leadership," I said. She held eye contact. "Yes." I asked the remaining questions. She answered all of them well. Professionally. Lauren had always interviewed beautifully. That had never been the problem. When I reached the end of the list I set the paper down. Folded my hands again. And I said, "I have one question that isn't on the standard list. Is that all right?" He said, "Of course." I said, "Why do you want to work here specifically? There are other firms in Austin. Other opportunities. Why Harmon Creative?" The room was very quiet. Lauren looked at me for a long moment. And then something happened that I genuinely did not expect. The performance dropped. Not partially. Completely. Her shoulders came down slightly. The chin lowered just enough. And her eyes. Those calculating, measuring eyes that I had watched work a room since we were teenagers. Just stopped working. He said, "Because I know what this place is. I know what you built here and what it took to build it. And I know what I did to it." Indeed. I said nothing. He said, "I'm not going to insult you by pretending the application was just about the job listing. You know why I'm here, Rachel." I waited. He said, "I needed to sit across from you. In this room. And say it to your face. What I did was wrong. It was calculated and it was cruel and there is no version of it that was anything other than what it was. I was jealous of you. I have been jealous of you for a very long time. And I took something that wasn't mine because somewhere in my head I convinced myself that you owed it to me. That life owed it to me. And I was wrong." The Austin afternoon light came through the window behind me. I looked at my sister. This woman who had taken my pitch and my clients and tried to take my team and my landlord and 4 years of my life's work. Sitting across from me now with nothing left to hide behind. I said, "Are you done?" He said, "Yes." I picked up my pen. Made one final note on the evaluation sheet. Then I looked up. I said, "Lauren, I'm not going to offer you this position." She nodded. She had known. Of course she had known. I said, "Not because of what happened. Not as punishment. Because you are genuinely not the right fit for what this company needs right now. And I think you know that too." He said, "I know." I said, "But I heard what you said. And I want you to know that I heard it." She looked at me. I said, "I'm not ready to have a sister again. I want to be honest with you about that. What you did didn't just cost me clients and money. It cost me something I can't put in a legal document. And that takes longer to rebuild than a business does." Her eyes were wet. She didn't blink. I said, "But I'm not going to carry this forever, Lauren. That's not who I am. And I don't think it's who you are either." "Not really," he said. "I don't know who I am anymore, Rachel. I think that's the actual problem." The room was very quiet. Then I said the thing I hadn't planned to say. The thing that came from somewhere underneath all the documentation and legal strategy and professional composure. I said, "Then figure it out. And when you do, call me. Not for a job. Just call me." She stood up. Straightened her jacket. That old habit. Then she said something she had never said to me in 36 years of being my sister. He said, "I'm proud of you, Rachel. I always was. I just never knew how to say it without it costing me something." He walked to the door, opened it, and left. I sat in my office for a long time after Lauren left. Not thinking exactly. Just sitting. Letting the quiet settle around me the way quiet does after something significant has finally finished happening. My coffee had gone cold. The Austin afternoon light had shifted. Somewhere down the hall I could hear Marcus laughing at something. That familiar sound. The sound of a team still intact. I looked around my office. The framed copy of our first client contract on the wall. Harmon Creative's first ever signed agreement. $3,200. A local restaurant that needed a rebrand. I had framed it not because of the money but because of what it represented. The first time someone had looked at what I built and decided it was worth paying for. The photo on my desk of James and me at Lake Travis last summer. Both of us squinting into the sun. Him laughing at something I had said. Me looking at him like I still couldn't quite believe he was real. The small succulent on the corner of my desk. Still alive. Still quietly doing what it was designed to do. I thought about Lauren's last words. "I'm proud of you, Rachel. I always was." I had waited a long time to hear something like that from her. Not those words specifically. Just acknowledgement. From the person who had always seemed to receive everything I quietly wanted. It didn't feel the way I thought it would either. Not hollow. Not too late. Just human. Complicated. The way most true things are. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from James. "Dinner tonight? Look, you've had a week." I smiled. Actually smiled. The real kind. I typed back. "Yes. Please. I have a lot to tell you." I stood up from my desk. Straightened my blazer. Picked up my coffee mug to take it to the kitchen. And I stopped at the door of my office for just a moment. Looked back at the room. 4 years ago I had furnished this office with a second-hand desk and a chair that squeaked and a lamp from a thrift store on 6th Street because I needed light and couldn't afford anything better. Now it was mine. Completely. Legally. Undeniably. No one had given it to me. No one had handed me a connection or a contract or a shortcut. I had built it. Brick by brick. Client by client. Late night by late night. And when someone had tried to take it, I had rebuilt it. Stronger. Leaner. With a team that had chosen to stay and a lawyer who had won and a landlord who sent referrals and a boyfriend who showed up every Friday with food I had forgotten to buy. I turned off the light. Walked down the hall. Said goodnight to Marcus who was still at his desk because he always was. Walked through the front door of Harmon Creative Solutions. And drove home to my life. The week after Lauren's interview I called Aunt Patricia. Not my lawyer. My actual aunt. Dad's younger sister. The one who had always treated both Lauren and me exactly the same and never understood why that was so rare in our family. I told her about the interview, about what Lauren had said. Aunt Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Wait, your sister has a long road ahead of her. And so do you. But the fact that you sat across from her in that room and heard her out. That says everything about who you are." I said, "I don't know if we'll ever be what sisters are supposed to be." He said, "Maybe not. But you left the door open. That's more than most people would have done." I thought about that for a long time afterward. Leaving the door open. Not because Lauren deserved it. Not because what she did was forgivable on any clean timeline. But because carrying permanent walls is heavy. And I had already spent too much energy carrying things that weren't mine to carry. Lauren had called me 2 weeks after the interview. Not about a job. Just a talk. We spoke for 22 minutes. Careful. Tentative. Like two people learning to walk on new ground that neither of them had mapped yet. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. It was just a beginning. Small and uncertain and real. And sometimes that's exactly what you start with. If you've ever had someone you trusted take something that was yours, you know that the hardest part isn't the loss. It's deciding who you want to be after it. I chose to rebuild. I chose to stay open. I chose to let the work speak for itself. And I want you to know. Whatever someone has taken from you. Whatever you're rebuilding right now. The math is different this time. Because now you know. If this story felt real to you. If it touched something you've lived through or watched someone you love go through. Drop a comment below. Tell me what time it is where you are right now. Tell me if you would have scheduled that interview. And if you're new here. Welcome to Honor Unveiled. Every story we tell is about real people, real pain, real strength, real justice. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And come back. Because the next story is already waiting. This has been Honor Unveiled. And we'll see you in the next one.